Tension mounts as ACP discussions on the controversial EU trade deal take center stage in Ghana.
Citizens are urged to rededicate themselves towards building a strong and vibrant agricultural sector, even as Agriculture Month is observed.
And infrastructure works have now resumed in Buxton after being delayed for more than a year due to security concerns.
Genie News eye on the judiciary, health tips, and of course the latest sporting action in the Diamond, Mineral Water and NCN Sport News and more after these. Good evening, I'm Delicia Fletcher.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Thursday, October 2, 2008. Here's what's happening.
Thanks, Delicia. The results of the African, Caribbean and Pacific states heads in Ghana can significantly impact on Ghana's chances of succeeding in having a review of the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union. Guyana is the only CARICOM country that outrightly rejects the agreement in its current form, and today's discussions in Ghana may set the tone for Guyana's next move. Here are details.
The 6th African, Caribbean and Pacific States Summit opened this morning in Accra, Ghana, under the theme Promoting Human Security and Development. The summit has high on its agenda the Economic Partnership Agreement with Europe, the global food and energy crisis, and the future of the ACP group on climate change. But for Ghana, all eyes will be on the discussions of the EPA with the European Union, an agreement which Ghana's President Barra Jagdeo has been very critical of over the past year. Ghana, being the only CARICOM country to refuse to sign the trade deal in its current form, is pushing for a review, hoping that the African states too decide not to sign the deal.
Our delegation, Foreign Minister Rodriguez, our Ambassador, P.I. Gomes, and Dr. Brewster, our former ambassador in Brussels, would be able to articulate the Guyana position that provides, notionally at least, another opportunity for parties to confirm that the positions they hold are endorsed or not endorsed, and in the case they are not, to provoke some opportunity for them to reassess.
Already calls are being issued by African farmers for their leaders not to sign on to the agreement, which they feel brings no benefit to the poor. During their meeting ahead of the summit, ACP foreign ministers have called for more aid for developing countries since they are under tremendous pressure due to the global food and fuel crisis. They also cited the EPA with Europe in its current form as another nail in the coffin of the already fragile regional economies. Ghana's President Barra Jagdeo has been lobbying for the past year at all possible levels for a review of the trade deal with Europe, since he feels that such a deal will just cripple regional economies. The Guyanese leader, who is not part of the meeting, took his argument to the United Nations a few days ago. But despite this, other CARICOM states have decided to sign a full EPA later this month. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
In the meantime, ACP Secretary General John Kaputin says the EPA with Europe has undermined the solidarity among ACP countries under the pretext of giving regional emphasis to the relationship between the EU and the 6 ACP regions. Mr. Kaputin made this comment during his address to the opening of the 6th ACP Summit in Ghana today. He noted that the trade deal is also threatening to deprive members that do not sign by giving deadlines, which could prove catastrophic to the fragile economies. Civil society groups have called on the leadership of the African, Caribbean and Pacific countries to reject outright the economic partnership agreements with the European Union. They argue that the EPAs, as currently structured, are set to continue and even carry further the destabilizing elements that have rendered developing countries' economies so dependent on aid. 100 obsolete weapons that were certified as unserviceable by the Audit Office of Guyana have been destroyed by the Guyana Police Force following a ceremony outside the police officer's mess. The ceremony was attended by Acting Commissioner of Police Henry Green, Minister Home Affairs Clement Rohi, among other dignitaries. Nacasia Logan reports.
Acting Commissioner of Police Henry Green says the 130 weapons is the first batch of catch of 1,000 that has been certified as unserviceable and identified for destruction. In a statement, Minister of Home Affairs Clement Rohi noted that more attention needs to be paid to the demand of the reduction aspect of small arms, and also says that Guyana will take such steps.
Guyana has taken the necessary step to establish a task force on narcotics and illicit weapons. This is in fulfillment of the UN Program of Action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all its aspects.
He also noted that Guyana wishes to soon endorse the Geneva Declaration and Forum of Action on Arms, Violence, and Development. Minister Roy says handguns are used in the commission of most homicides.
Handguns account for approximately 38.7% of homicides, while shotguns account for 6.5%, rifles 3.2%, and other weapons 3.2%.
He, however, cautioned that in the face of the existing realities, the joint services continue to do their job.
In A Division alone, 48.9% of the 279 occurrences involved the use of a firearm. But there were successes too. The law enforcement agencies and joint services continue to seek and find and seize illegal firearms on a regular basis. Between June and September 2007, 104 firearms were seized, while for the corresponding period in 2008, 107 were seized. A and E&F divisions reaped the largest harvest with 48 and 37 respectively. The recent find by the joint services on Regent Street is an indication that the law enforcement agencies have not given up, nor are they complacent and resting on their laurels.
Reporting for the NCN 6 o'clock news, I'm Nakasia Logan.
Government has mandated Gaisuku to take immediate steps to correct the poor production performance which has been plaguing the industry for the past few years. According to a press release from the Agriculture Ministry, Cabinet has expressed grave concern since sugar is of major importance to the national economy, especially this time when significant investments are being made. Cabinet has ordered independent financial and production reviews in sugar to assess the current situation confronting the industry and possible solutions. Agriculture Minister Robert Prasad has put forward several recommendations regarding immediate interventions and is slated to spearhead a special board meeting at LBI. ACP foreign ministers have called for international funding agencies to shore up aid to the poor countries with the same urgency as the rich world's banks were being bailed out. This call came at the ministers' meeting, which ended in Ghana yesterday, as they feel poor countries are facing a disastrous cut in aid and capital flows. They feel that the world's poor must not suffer from the mistakes of rich, developed countries. Edward Lane reports.
Gathered for the summit of the 79-nation ACP group, which started in Ghana today, foreign ministers said that they were bracing for the impact of the international financial turmoil on their often fragile commodity exporting economies. The ACP political figures feel the consequences of the ACP, especially for small vulnerable countries, will be disastrous. According to Arvind Balal, Mauritius' Minister of Foreign Affairs, there will be less overseas development assistance money, there will be less obligations on behalf of developed countries to honor their commitments of monetary agreements. Several ministers estimate that flows of funds for emerging markets would drop by as much as 25% as a result of the developed world banking crisis, which has toppled Wall Street firms, frozen lending among banks, and forced the US and European governments to rescue failing banks and companies. They noted that many ACP countries were already grappling with budgetary shortfalls and pressures caused by sharp rises over the last year of global food and fuel prices. The Foreign Affairs ministers are calling for the international financial institutions to examine urgently what can be done, including deployment of funding, to ensure that capital flows and aid flows to developing countries are not interrupted. The ACP ministers noted that the US and European governments can find money to rescue their own economy, but when it comes to aid for developing countries, they're always reluctant. European Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso also urged rich donor countries not to neglect development aid. He adds that there are millions and millions of people who are living in extreme poverty, and hunger increased last year in the world, and as such, he feels that international aid must not be weakened. Some ACP ministers hope their nations' strong trade with China, India and Brazil could initially shield them from the worst effects of the international financial chaos, but they recognize the repercussions would be felt sooner or later. Even top African oil producer Nigeria might not escape feeling some impact. Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister Caroline Rodriguez is in Ghana participating in these meetings. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.